Simon Sinek was the first to kind of make the popular phrase, start with why. Why is it important for leaders to focus on that instead of starting or focusing on the what of a situation?
Well, Simon Sinek famously says, nobody cares about what you do. They care about why you do it. And what he means by that is that purpose is the most important thing, and those are why questions. And why questions are qualitative questions. They're not quantitative questions that you can answer with numbers. And so we often, if we come out of a business situation into the lodge, we're very analytical minded in our personality. We'll want to just make sure that we're hitting whatever goals as measured by X, Y, and Z. But the why question, which is about vision, purpose, and meaning, is qualitative. And you have to ask, okay, what is our lodge's general purpose? And then second, what is my purpose as a leader personally? And then how do I get other people to buy into that? And it's important because that's what people will, quote unquote, die for, right? They're not going to work harder and harder just because of some particular incentives that you create or just because you tell them to. They're going to work hard in the lodge towards a common goal because they find meaning and purpose in it. And so Sinek gives, the famous example of Apple, that their why is more about challenging the status quo. It's not about making computers or iPhones. It's really about challenging the status quo. And because they have that ethos, they're able to make all kinds of products that we will buy, right? Even Apple TVs now that we're watching, which doesn't seem like it should be related to desktop computers.
Or their whole Apple TV production line that's come with all the media they have to create for these devices. But one of the key things that I saw in at least my personal life, and then applied it to my professional life and started realizing the massive difference, was getting to the point of being the master of my profession, right? And like as the master of the lodge. And Masons will get what I'm talking about here, where there's kind of a check down from the master through the wardens at certain parts during the opening and the closing of the lodge. And I quickly started looking at that and going, oh, that kind of reminds me of the stages of how management is, where you have executives, you have senior leaders, and then you have managers. And that lower level management always stinks because you're literally just managing problems. How do I get away from that to being the person who's handling the bigger things like the vision or the solutions instead of just managing the problems? And to your point, when you talk about when you start focusing on the why, you understand the motivations of individuals. You start to understand some of the root causes of problems so that you're going past being a firefighter to a problem solver.
Yeah. And I would say there is a difference between leadership and management. I think lodges are great at creating efficient managers, maybe not so great at creating leaders. What's the difference? There's an old story from Stephen Covey. He says, imagine we're a team and our job is to cut a path through the jungle. He says the manager's job is to be down there making sure the machetes and tools are sharpened, that people are getting food and water, that everyone's feeling that they're getting breaks and all those things. The leader's job is to climb the tree and make sure we're actually headed in the right direction to begin with. And many times what we're doing is practicing really great management skills, which are necessary and needed. Everything we've talked about up to this point of learning how to publicly speak, gaining more confidence, learning how to work an agenda, being organized, planning. The trestle board is about strategic planning, right? These different things are very important. But unless you can be the one that has the vision or collective vision of your group, you might be cutting the path in the wrong direction very efficiently.
In your program, Convinced the Science of Leadership, which you have been very generous to share the YouTube links to that so brothers can watch that after this podcast episode and even share it in Lodge to get, some deeper perspective and maybe even some ideas on how to become better leaders. You mentioned that humans are not rational decision makers. And immediately jokes started coming to my mind where I'm like, of course, you're talking about past masters here. How as a leader do we adjust for those emotional decision-making moments?